Mark, look, you've been covering the story right from when it first broke yesterday morning. And as you're saying, waiting now for First Light to resume that search for a number of people believed to still be in the water.
Yeah, sadly, after all this time, they're not going to be pulling anyone alive from the water, but clearly the rescue services still want to go out to find those that are unaccounted for. Now, we believe up to 4, some reports suggesting potentially more. We know that this incident unfolded around 3 a.m. yesterday. This scallop trawler that was out in the channel, the crew were awoken by the sound of screams. They looked over the side of the vessel and they found 5 people clinging to the side of their vessel, and then they could see this partially deflated small boat just nearby as well. So they started scrambling to get the people on board. They did a really valiant effort. They managed to rescue 31 of the migrants, quite a number who had actually been in the water. The remainder were picked up from the water by lifeboats, Border Force vessels, Royal Navy vessels that all descended on that area to help. And as I say, the authorities still believe that up to 4 people are missing, because they've been speaking to those on board, and the count that they are fairly confident with is that there were 47 people on board that small boat. That's not unusual. It's normally between 40 and 50 that cram onto these inflatables to make the journey across the channel. And of course they made the journey yesterday because with 2 days of bad weather, 500 odd made the journey over the weekend when there was a weather window. 2 days of bad weather, Monday, Tuesday, then in the early hours of yesterday morning, because conditions calmed a bit, these boats were pushed out into the middle of this very busy shipping lane. And although it was relatively calm off the Normandy coast, when they got mid-channel, we're told there were swells of up to 2 metres in height. It just shows you how things can change in the middle of the English Channel. But that's not going to deter them, sadly. They're still going to keep coming.
This news of this tragedy in the middle of the Channel would presumably get back to Calais, to the migrants in Calais. It doesn't act as any deterrent?
No, not at all. I mean, you know, people had thought, they'd hoped that 13 months ago, when we saw 27 confirmed dead, actually the total was well over 30 who'd been on that boat, but their bodies were never recovered. That news got back to Calais. People here on this side of the Channel, authorities in France, had hoped, well, maybe the criminal gangs will think twice about this. Maybe the migrants themselves will think it's just not worth the risk. But that's not proven to be the case. In fact, in the year since, we know that double the number of people who've come across the Channel. It stands at 45,000 people now who've come across this year, with still a good couple of weeks or so left to run in the year. And as I say, the weather conditions today aren't really conducive to getting boats across. We might still get 1 or 2 that the people, smugglers, push out into the sea, but we're told that Saturday it's going to be calm again, so expect another surge, because what happens in the winter months in particular is that they're stacking up effectively, waiting to get across, because you can get 5-6 days of really bad weather where it's impassable, and then the second things calm down, they surge en masse off those beaches in Normandy, unlike the summer, of course, where you can get a week or 2 of really good weather and then maybe 200 or 300 come over each day over the course of quite a few days.
Do we know any more about the profile, if you like, of the people who were on the dinghy? There were reports initially of some families, perhaps children, but a lot of the pictures, certainly, of the rescue seemed to be young men. Yeah,
I'd be slightly cautious about suggesting that there were women and children on board, because it is a well-worn tactic of those on board these vessels when they want help from the rescue services to say there are women and children on board. Okay. What normally happens is the vessels get into UK waters if they're not intercepted at that point by Border Force or lifeboats. Then they're told by the people smugglers to dial 999. when they get a phone signal from the UK side, speak to the Coast Guard, tell them they're in distress. And of course the UK authorities have to respond to it as if it is a maritime emergency. And that's what happens, as I say. So it's perfectly plausible that whoever was on board the vessel was telling the charity in Normandy that there were women and children to ensure that there was a quicker response. I mean, the truth is there will always be a quick response from the rescue services if they fear life is in peril. It doesn't matter if they're women, children or men. And yeah, you're right. The images certainly suggested the vast majority, if not all those on board, were young men.